My name is Marcus, and at 32, I never expected to set foot in my hometown again. For 15 years, I built a life far from the family that always saw me as the disappointment. When that email arrived inviting me to Dad's birthday, I almost deleted it. Something made me go, though. Maybe I needed closure, or maybe I just wanted to see their faces one last time. I never anticipated Stephanie's smug voice cutting through the party noise. "So you are still washing cars, huh?" As everyone laughed, I simply handed her my business card. Before I tell you how the color drained from her face, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know where you are watching from. Trust me, revenge served professionally is still revenge. Growing up in Millfield, Michigan was like living in a snow globe, pretty from the outside, but suffocating if you were trapped within. Our middle-class neighborhood had neat lawns and nosy neighbors who always seemed to know your business before you did. My father, Richard, owned a hardware store downtown that had been in the family for 2 generations. He was respected in the community, firm handshake, active in the local chamber of commerce, and known for giving decent advice about home repairs. My mother, Eleanor, taught English at the local high school, which meant she not only graded my papers, but heard all the teacher lounge gossip about her children. And then there was Stephanie, my sister. 3 years older and a million miles ahead in our parents' eyes. From kindergarten, she was labeled gifted, reading before everyone else, winning spelling bees, and being selected for advanced programs. By high school, she was the complete package valedictorian captain of the debate team, homecoming queen, and early admission to an Ivy League college. Our house was a shrine to her achievements, and trophies lined the mantel-frame, certificates, covered the walls, and newspaper clippings featuring her accomplishments filled a scrapbook my mother updated religiously. "Have you met my daughter Stephanie?" Dad would beam to customers. "Full scholarship to Cornell. Going to be a lawyer someday." Meanwhile, I was the other one. I struggled with reading from day one. Words jumbled themselves on the page, letters would flip and dance when I tried to focus. My second-grade teacher suggested I might have dyslexia, but my mother dismissed it. "He just needs to apply himself like his sister," she told the teacher during a conference I wasn't supposed to overhear. Stephanie never had these problems. By middle school, the comparisons were relentless. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. My report cards were met with sighs and lectures about potential, while Stephanie's were cause for celebration dinners at the nicest restaurant in town. The irony was that I had talents of my own. They just weren't the ones my family valued. I could take apart an engine and reassemble it blindfolded by age 14. I could diagnose mechanical issues by the sound a car made coming down the street. My grandfather, Dad's father, was the only one who saw something in me. Grandpa Joe had been a mechanic before he retired. His garage behind his house was my sanctuary. On weekends and after school, I would ride my bike the 3 miles to his place and lose myself in grease and metal and the pure satisfaction of fixing things. "You got magic hands, boy," he would say, watching me work. "Some people read books, some people read machines. Both are worth something." When I was 15, Grandpa helped me buy my first project car, a beat-up 1985 Ford Mustang that looked like it had been pulled from a junkyard, which it basically had. I spent every spare minute for 2 years restoring that car, learning bodywork, engine, rebuilding, and electrical systems. The day I got it running, Grandpa slapped me on the back so hard it left a handprint. "See that you built that from nothing. Don't you forget it." My parents were less impressed. The car was old, loud, and didn't fit their image of success. When I drove it to school, Mom asked me to park it a block away so her colleagues wouldn't see it in the teacher's lot. The defining moment came during Stephanie's college graduation weekend. She was 21, graduating summa cum laude with a double major in political science and economics. I was 17 and had just finished my junior year with a solid B average that had required tremendous effort on my part. My parents rented out the community center for Stephanie's graduation party. 200 people were invited: family, friends, my mother's colleagues, my father's business associates. For weeks before, it was all they talked about. "Marcus, you will help serve food," my mother informed me, not asked. "And wear something decent, please. No car logos." I didn't argue. I had learned that resistance just made things worse. So I put on the button-down shirt and khakis she laid out for me and spent the evening carrying trays of appetizers and refilling drinks. Toward the end of the night, exhausted and feeling invisible, I was collecting empty glasses when I overheard my father talking to my uncle in what he thought was a private conversation. "We are so proud of Stephanie. Law school at Columbia next fall. We have been saving for years for this." "What about Marcus?" my uncle asked. "He graduates next year, right?" There was a pause, and I froze behind the decorative plant that concealed me. "Marcus," my father sighed. "He will probably just work at a garage or something. That is fine. Someone has to fix cars, right? Not everyone is cut out for higher education." I felt like I had been punched. Not because I desperately wanted college. Honestly, I wasn't sure what I wanted yet. But the dismissal in his voice, the complete lack of belief in any potential future for me beyond turning wrenches, it crystallized everything I had felt for years. I wasn't the child they had wanted. I was the disappointment they had resigned themselves to. That night, I sat in my Mustang, until dawn engine off, just thinking. For the first time, I wondered if staying in Millfield was actually my best option. Maybe there was a bigger world out there for someone like me, someone who didn't fit the narrow definition of success my family worshipped. The college fund revelation came a few months after Stephanie's graduation. I had actually started thinking about community college, maybe studying automotive technology or business, something practical that would build on what I already knew. I hadn't mentioned it to my parents yet, wanting to research options first. One night at dinner, Stephanie called from New York, excited about her apartment and orientation at Columbia Law. The speakerphone sat in the center of the table, like she was present, her voice filling our dining room while we ate meatloaf and mashed potatoes. "The tuition bill came today," she mentioned casually. $22,000 for the first semester. "We have got it covered, honey," Mom assured her. "We can pull from the investments we set aside." Something about her wording caught my attention. Investments plural. After dinner, while my parents were watching their shows, I slipped into my father's home office. I had never snooped before. It wasn't my style, but something felt off. In the filing cabinet behind folders marked taxes and insurance, I found one labeled college funds. Inside were two sets of documents. The first, labeled Stephanie, showed a custodial account started the year she was born, with monthly contributions for 21 years. The second, labeled Marcus, showed a similar account, started when I was born. The difference was that Stephanie's account statements were current, while mine stopped 3 years earlier. A withdrawal slip showed the entire balance, $47,000, had been transferred to a different account, one with Stephanie's name alone. The next statement from that account showed a payment to Columbia University. My college fund had been emptied to pay for my sister's law school. I sat on the office floor, documents spread around me, trying to process the betrayal. They hadn't even mentioned it to me, hadn't asked, just took what was meant for my future and gave it to Stephanie, who already had so much. I was still sitting there when my father came in for his reading glasses. "What are you doing in my office?" he demanded, then saw the papers. His face shifted from anger to something like embarrassment, but not quite guilt. "You took my college money," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "For Stephanie." My mother appeared in the doorway, drawn by our voices. "We should discuss this in the living room," she said tightly, glancing at the scattered documents. In the living room, they sat together on the couch, while I stood unable to settle. "We made a practical decision," my father explained, as if discussing a business transaction. "Stephanie got into an elite law school. That is a guaranteed return on investment. Your fund was just sitting there, and you have never expressed any interest in college." "I was going to," I said. "Community college. Automotive technology. I was researching programs." My mother's laugh was soft but cutting. "Honey, you don't need to spend college money to learn what you already do in Grandpa's garage. Stephanie is going to be a lawyer. She has real expenses." "That money was for me," I insisted. "You put it aside for my future." "And it is going toward the family's future," my father countered. "When Stephanie makes partner at a firm, she will be able to help all of us. That is how family works." The conversation continued in circles, with my parents firmly believing they had made the right choice. The message was clear: Stephanie's potential was worth investing in. Mine was not. The final blow came when they called Stephanie to resolve the situation. On speakerphone again, she listened to a sanitized version of my discovery and reaction. "Marcus is upset about the college fund reallocation," Mom explained. "Oh," Stephanie's voice was dismissive. "I thought everyone knew about that. I mean, it's not like you would have used it anyway, right? You're a car guy." Those words, car guy, carried all the condescension of someone who saw manual labor as beneath them. In her world, people like me existed to service people like her. That night, I made my decision. I waited until after midnight, when my parents were asleep. I packed 2 duffel bags with clothes, took my tools, my saved cash, about $800, and the important documents I would need, birth certificate, social security card, high school transcripts. I left my phone on my bed. I would get a new one they couldn't track. Before leaving town, I drove to Grandpa Joe's house. I hadn't planned to tell anyone, but I couldn't leave without saying goodbye to the one person who had believed in me. He answered the door in his robe, took one look at my packed car, and nodded. "Come in for a minute, son." We sat at his kitchen table, the same one where he had taught me to play poker and rebuild carburetors. They took my college fund for Stephanie's law school. I told him the words still bitter in my mouth. He didn't look surprised. "Your father always played favorites. His mother did the same to him, though he doesn't see the pattern." From a cookie jar on top of his refrigerator, Grandpa pulled out an envelope. Inside was $2,000 in cash. "Been saving this for an emergency," he said, sliding it across to me. "Reckon this qualifies." "Grandpa, I can't take your money." "Not asking, boy. And here." He stood with a groan and went to his hall closet, returning with a worn leather toolbox. These were my daddy's tools. Best German steel. They don't make them like this anymore. The toolbox was heavy, solid, with history and possibility. Inside were precision instruments that had built and fixed things for 2 generations before me. "Where will you go?" he asked, as we walked to my car. "West," I said. "Seattle, maybe? Or Portland, somewhere with rain instead of snow." He hugged me then, something he rarely did. "You write to me, old-fashioned letters, 1 a month, so I know you're alive." "I will," I promised. "And Marcus," he said, as I got in the car, "don't come back until you're ready. Don't come back out of guilt or because they ask. Come back when you've built something that's yours." Those were the last words my grandfather said to me in person. I drove away from Millfield at 2 in the morning, watching the town shrink in my rearview mirror, until it disappeared completely. I drove west for 3 days, stopping only for gas, fast food, and a few hours of sleep in rest areas. I crossed state lines like I was shedding skins. Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, Montana, Idaho, Washington. Seattle welcomed me with typical Pacific Northwest weather, a misty rain that seemed to blur the edges of everything. I had no plan, no connections, nothing but my car, my tools, and a determination to build something from nothing. The first weeks were brutal. I slept in my car, parked in different Walmart lots each night. I showered at a gym, where I bought the cheapest membership. I applied for jobs everywhere, restaurants, shops, warehouses. Finally, I got hired at a car wash just outside downtown. The pay was minimum wage, but it was a start. As promised, I sent my grandfather a postcard once a month. I kept them brief and positive. No mention of sleeping in my car or eating ramen for days straight. I told him about the mountains, the Space Needle, the ferries crossing Puget Sound. I promised I was working towards something better. 3 years later, I received a letter from my mother of the only communication from my family since I left. Grandpa Joe had died of a heart attack. The funeral was in 2 days. I didn't go back. I couldn't face them yet, couldn't bear their judgment, or false sympathy. Instead, I stood on the shore of Puget Sound, the day of his funeral, watching the water and saying my own goodbye to the one person who had seen my potential. I sent flowers but no note. Let them wonder. That day, I made another vow I would build something significant, something with my name on it. Not to prove them wrong. Grandpa deserved better than a grandson, motivated only by spite, but to prove him right. To show that his faith in me had foundation. 6 months into my job at Emerald City Car Wash, I got the break that would change everything. I was detailing a midnight blue Aston Martin, a beautiful machine that someone had treated carelessly. The owner, a tech executive named Patrick Donovan, was waiting in the customer lounge when I noticed a subtle knocking sound as I moved the car into position. Rather than just washing it, I popped the hood. The engine configuration was unfamiliar, but engines speak a universal language if you know how to listen. After a 15-minute inspection, I identified the issue, a loose timing chain tensioner that would eventually cause catastrophic engine failure. When Donovan came to collect his car, I approached him hesitantly. "Sir, I noticed a sound in your engine that concerns me. It is your timing chain tensioner. If it fails completely, you are looking at about $20,000 in repairs." He looked skeptical. The dealer just serviced it last week. They missed it. The sound is subtle, but it is definitely there. I would recommend getting it to a specialist before driving it much further. Something in my confidence must have convinced him because he asked, "Do you know a specialist?" For an Aston in Seattle, I thought for a moment. Precision Motors in Bellevue. Ask for Mike. Tell him exactly what I told you. 2 days later, Donovan returned to the car wash. I was hosing down a minivan when he approached, looking both impressed and slightly annoyed. "You were right," he said. Mike confirmed it immediately. Said if I had driven another 100 miles, I would have needed a full engine rebuild. He handed me a business card. "I own a high-end auto shop in Kirkland. We restore classics and service luxury vehicles. We need someone with your ear and eye. Starting salary is 3 times what you are making here, plus benefits." Just like that, my life changed direction. I gave notice at the car wash that day. Precision European was a different world. Clean facilities, professional environment, and cars, worth more than houses. My first month was pure learning their systems, their standards, the expectations of clients who owned vehicles worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. What I lacked in formal training I made up for in intuition and willingness to learn. I stayed late studying repair manuals, watched the senior mechanics, and volunteered for the most difficult diagnostics. Within 6 months, I was handling complex restorations on my own. Patrick became something of a mentor. When he learned I was living in a tiny studio apartment and still driving my old Mustang, now properly restored, he suggested I think bigger. "You have a gift, Marcus, but in this business perception matters. Dress for the job you want, drive something that shows you understand quality, and clients will trust you with their prized possessions." He was right. I upgraded my wardrobe, moved to a better apartment, and started saving for a newer vehicle. But most importantly, I enrolled in night classes at the community college, business management, and accounting. If I was going to build something lasting, I needed to understand the business side as thoroughly as I understood engines. For 2 years, my life was work and school. I had no social life, no hobbies, just the single-minded focus of someone building a foundation. I made connections with clients, learned their preferences, remembered details about their collections. I became the requested technician for the most discerning customers. When a client mentioned he was selling a bankrupt restoration shop's equipment at auction, I saw my opportunity. With my savings and a small loan co-signed by Patrick, I purchased the essential tools to start my own specialized restoration business. My first workshop was tiny, a rented industrial space in South Seattle with barely enough room for 2 vehicles. I started with what I knew best, Mustangs and other American classics from the 1960s through the 80s. I kept my day job at Precision, working evenings and weekends on my own projects. Word spread among collectors. My restorations weren't just mechanically perfect, they had soul. I respected the history of each vehicle while incorporating subtle modern improvements for reliability. Within a year, I had enough work to quit Precision and focus entirely on my own business, Heritage Motors. The expansion happened organically. A wealthy client from Portland asked if I would open a second location there to service his collection. Another wanted me to establish a presence in San Francisco. I was strategic, ensuring each new location maintained the standards I had established. The real breakthrough came in year 5. Frustrated with the limitations of existing diagnostic tools for classic vehicles, I collaborated with a software engineer client to develop a proprietary system that could interface with both vintage and modern components. We called it RetroTech, and it revolutionized how classic cars could be maintained. Major manufacturers took notice. Ford's Heritage Division licensed our software for their own restoration shops. BMW followed, then Mercedes. Suddenly, I wasn't just a restoration expert. I was an innovator. By year 8, Heritage Motors had locations in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Phoenix. We employed over 500 people from master mechanics to software developers. Our waiting list for full restorations was 18 months long, with clients paying deposits of $50,000 just to secure a spot. I was featured in Auto Enthusiast magazine as the restoration revolutionary. The article detailed my journey and innovations without mentioning my family background. I had never discussed that with journalists. There was a spread showing me in my Seattle headquarters, surrounded by rare vehicles in various stages of restoration. My personal life finally found balance too. I met Jessica at a charity auction where I had donated a restoration package. She was coordinating the event, smart, unpretentious, and completely unimpressed by wealth or status. Our first date was a disaster. I accidentally set off the fire alarm at an exclusive restaurant, but she found it endearing rather than embarrassing. 2 years later, we bought a home together, overlooking Puget Sound. At 32, I had built exactly what I had promised myself that day, by the water after Grandpa died. Heritage Motors was an industry leader. My innovations were standard practice, and I had created a team that felt more like family than the one I had left behind. I rarely thought about Millfield anymore. Occasionally, I would dream about Grandpa's garage or the roads where I had first learned to drive. But my parents' Stephanie the hardware store, the high school, they had faded to distant memories. Until the email arrived. The message came on a Tuesday morning as I reviewed quarterly projections with my CFO. My personal assistant Amber forwarded it with a note. This came through the company contact form. The sender claims to be your mother. I almost deleted it without reading. Almost. The subject line was innocuous family update and invitation. Dear Marcus, it began as if we had spoken last week, rather than 15 years ago. I hope this message finds you well. It has been too long since we have heard from you, and the family often wonders how you are doing. Your father is turning 65 next month, and we are hosting a birthday celebration at the community center on the 15th. It would mean a lot to him if you could attend. Stephanie will be there with her husband James. She has been made junior partner at her law firm in Chicago and recently purchased a lakefront home. She asks about you sometimes. Your grandfather always wanted the family to reconcile. I know he would have wanted you to come. Please let us know if you can make it. We would love to see what you have been up to all these years. Love, Mom. No acknowledgement of why I left. No recognition of the silence between us. Just a casual invitation and an update about Stephanie's success, as if that would be my primary concern after 15 years. I closed my laptop harder than necessary, startling my CFO. Everything okay? He asked. Family stuff, I replied, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. I rarely mentioned having a family at all. That evening, I showed the email to Jessica as we prepared dinner in our kitchen overlooking the water. The Space Needle glittered in the distance, the city lights reflecting on the sound. Are you going to go? She asked, chopping vegetables with precise, even cuts. I don't see the point, I said. Nothing has changed. They haven't even acknowledged what happened. Maybe they can't, Jessica suggested. Some people aren't capable of that level of self-reflection. Doesn't mean you can't get closure. I considered this as I stirred the risotto. What would closure even look like after all this time? Only you know that, she said. But I think part of you wants to show them who you've become. Not out of spite, but because that chapter of your life has never properly ended. She was right as usual. The following day I discussed it with Dr. Winters, my therapist of 5 years. She had helped me work through the abandonment issues and self-doubt that my family had instilled. What do you hope to achieve by going? She asked. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants them to see what I've built. Part of me wants to confirm that I was right to leave. And maybe, I hesitated, maybe I want to know if there's anything worth salvaging. Those are all valid reasons, she said. Just be prepared for them to be exactly the same as when you left. People rarely change fundamentally, especially if they've never had to confront their behavior. I thought about it for another week. Before sending a brief reply, "I'll be there. No need to save me a room. I'll make my own arrangements." The preparation for the trip became a form of therapy itself. I decided against the obvious status symbols: no private jet, no entourage. Instead, I would drive myself in my personally restored 1967 Shelby GT 500, a magnificent machine that represented my journey from the boy who fixed cars to the man who had transformed an industry. I selected a thoughtful gift for my father, a rare set of handcrafted fishing lures from an artisan in Montana. He had always loved fishing, though. I doubted he had much time for it while running the hardware store. For my mother, a first edition of her favorite novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. Small gestures that showed I remembered who they were even if they had forgotten who I was. Jessica offered to accompany me, but this was something I needed to do alone. "I'll be your support system from here," she said. "Call me anytime, day or night." The drive from Seattle to Millfield took 3 days. I could have flown and rented a car, but the journey itself became important. Watching the landscape change from the mountains and forests of the Northwest to the flat open farmland of the Midwest. With each mile memories surfaced that I thought I had buried the convenience store where Dad would buy me ice cream after Little League games, the rare moments of connection, and the lake where Mom taught me to swim the high school football field where I had sat alone in the bleachers while everyone cheered for Stephanie. Millfield itself had changed little. The main street had a few new businesses, and the old movie theater had been converted to a craft brewery. But the essential character remained small, insular, comfortable, with its own limitations. I checked into the Millfield Inn, a renovated Victorian that had opened since I left. The young woman at the reception desk didn't recognize my name, which was a relief. I wasn't ready to navigate small-town curiosity just yet. In my room, I laid out my outfit for the party: dark jeans, a charcoal button-down, and a navy blazer, casual but put together. No flashy watch, no designer labels, nothing that screamed money or success. I wanted to be seen for who I was, not what I owned. The morning of the party, I woke early and took a drive around town. I passed our old house, now painted a different color with unfamiliar landscaping. I drove by Grandpa's place, which had been sold after his death, the garage, where I had learned my craft, now converted to a home gym, visible through the open door. I stopped at his grave in the small cemetery on the edge of town. The headstone was simple granite. Joseph William Reed, beloved husband, father, grandfather. I placed a small model car on the grave, a replica of the first vehicle we had restored together. "I did it, Grandpa," I said quietly. "Built something that's mine, just like you said." As the time for the party approached, I felt strangely calm. Whatever happened today, I had come back on my own terms. I was no longer the invisible second child, or the disappointing son. I was Marcus Reed, CEO of Heritage Motors, a man who had built something substantial from nothing but determination and skill. I started the Shelby's engine, listening to its perfect rumble, and drove toward a past I had never expected to face again. The community center parking lot was filled with sensible Midwestern vehicles. SUVs, practical sedans, a few pickup trucks. My Shelby, gleaming midnight blue with perfect silver racing stripes, stood out like a exotic bird among pigeons. As I locked it, an older man walking in gave a low whistle of appreciation. "Beautiful machine," he said. "67. "Good eye," I replied. "Don't see many of those around here. You must be from out of town." "Something like that." Inside, the community center had been decorated with blue and silver balloons, Dad's favorite colors, and a banner reading, "Happy 65th Birthday, Richard." A table near the entrance held a guest book and a framed photo of my father, older, grayer, but with the same stern expression I remembered. Mom spotted me first. She was standing with a group of women I recognized as her former teaching colleagues. When our eyes met, her conversation stopped mid-sentence. She excused herself and approached, moving with the same brisk efficiency I remembered. "Marcus," she said, her voice carrying a complex mix of emotions. "You came." I said I would. She attempted a hug that felt more like a formal gesture than an expression of affection. I returned it with equal stiffness. "Let me look at you," she said, stepping back. Her eyes scanned me critically, The way she used to check my appearance before school events. "You look healthy." "I am," I confirmed. "Where's Dad?" "Over by the bar with his fishing buddies." She glanced at my outfit. "I thought you might dress up more for the occasion." Some things never changed. I simply nodded and moved in my father's direction, aware of curious glances from guests who were trying to place the unfamiliar face. Dad saw me coming. He finished his drink, said something to his friends, and met me halfway across the room. He had aged considerably, his hair now completely gray, his posture slightly stooped. The hardware business had taken its toll on his body. "Son," he said, extending his hand formally. "We shook like business associates. Glad you could make it." "Happy birthday, Dad." "That your car out front, the Shelby?" "It is." "Looks old," he commented, missing the irony that the vehicle was worth more than his house. I restored it myself. A moment of awkward silence stretched between us before he gestured toward the bar. "Get yourself a drink. Mingle a bit. Lots of people haven't seen you in years." And just like that, I was dismissed. No questions about my life, my work, my journey. Just a suggestion to get a drink, as if I had been away at college for a semester, rather than gone for 15 years. I did get that drink, a club soda with lime, and found myself cornered by distant relatives who asked vague questions that revealed they knew nothing about me. "So where are you living these days, Seattle?" "Oh, must be rainy, sometimes." "And what do you do out there?" "I work with cars." I kept my answers deliberately brief, watching their interest fade when they realized I wasn't going to provide gossip-worthy details. One aunt actually patted my arm and said, "Well, not everyone can be a success like your sister." Speaking of Stephanie, she made her entrance 45 minutes after I arrived. The double doors opened, and she swept in with a tall, distinguished-looking man I assumed was James. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than most people in the room, made in a month, her hair styled in an elegant updo that screamed big city sophistication. The party's energy immediately shifted toward her. My parents rushed to greet them, exclaiming over Stephanie's appearance, her husband's distinguished bearing the beautiful watch he wore. Dad hugged her with genuine warmth, a stark contrast to our businesslike handshake. I observed from a distance, sipping my club soda and noting the family dynamics that hadn't changed in 15 years. Stephanie was still the sun, and everyone else merely planets in her orbit. Dinner was served buffet style, but the seating had been arranged in advance. I discovered I had been placed at what was effectively the kids' table, with teenage cousins and a couple of family friends' college-age children. Stephanie and James naturally were seated at the head table with my parents and the guests of honor. Throughout the meal, I heard snippets of conversation about Stephanie's latest courtroom victory, the house on Lake Michigan, their plans to vacation in the south of France. My father beamed with pride. My mother touched Stephanie's arm repeatedly, as if to physically connect with her daughter's success. No one asked about my life or work. No one seemed to notice or care that I was even there beyond the initial recognition of my presence. After the main course, Mom stood and called for attention. "We've prepared a little slideshow to celebrate Richard's 65 wonderful years." The lights dimmed and a projector displayed images on the wall. Baby pictures of my father, his childhood, meeting my mother, their wedding. Then came family photos, and the pattern was unmistakable. Most featured Stephanie's achievements, her graduation, her wedding, her law school commencement, her standing outside her firm. I appeared in perhaps 3 images out of 50, always in the background, never the focus. The final slide showed my parents with Stephanie and James on a boat on Lake Michigan, all smiles and success, with the caption, "The greatest achievement of all, our beautiful family." I wasn't in the picture. I wasn't part of the greatest achievement. As applause filled the room, I felt a strange sense of peace. Any lingering doubt about my decision to leave had been erased. This wasn't my family in any meaningful sense of the word. These were people connected by biology, but not by genuine care or interest. Dad gave a speech thanking everyone for coming, highlighting his proudest accomplishments: 40 years in business, 43 years of marriage, and watching my daughter become the success she is today. Not children. Daughter. Singular. As dessert was served, I considered leaving quietly. I had seen what I came to see, but before I could make my exit, Stephanie approached my table, champagne flute in hand. Her expression held the practiced charm of someone accustomed to being the most important person in the room. "Little brother," she said, her voice carrying just enough to draw attention from nearby tables. "Mom said you're still in Seattle." "I am. And still working with cars." The slight emphasis on "still" conveyed volumes. "Something like that," I replied neutrally. She took a sip of champagne, clearly enjoying her moment of magnanimity in acknowledging the less successful sibling. Then came the line she had probably been planning since hearing I would attend. "So you're still washing cars, huh?" The room didn't exactly fall silent, but conversations nearby definitely paused. People were watching, waiting for my response to this obvious power play. Stephanie smiled, confident in her position. A few chuckles emerged from the guests who had overheard. Her friends, former teachers, who had always favored her relatives, who defined success by salary and status. I looked at her perfectly manicured hand, holding the expensive champagne flute, at the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist, at the practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. I saw my parents watching from the head table, my father slightly uncomfortable, but making no move to intervene. My mother actually looking pleased at Stephanie's display of superiority. And in that moment, I knew exactly what Grandpa Joe had meant about coming back only when I was ready. I was ready. I took my time finishing the bite of cake on my fork, aware that each second of silence increased the awkwardness for Stephanie. She had expected either embarrassment or defensiveness, in reactions she could use to further establish her dominance. My calm was clearly unsettling. Finally, I placed my fork down, stood up slowly, and reached into my jacket pocket. I extracted a business card, simple, elegant, cream-colored cardstock, with raised lettering in navy blue. Our company's minimal logo, a stylized steering wheel with wings, sat above my name and title. Without a word, I handed it to Stephanie. Her expression shifted from smug superiority to confusion as she read the card. Then her eyes widened, her perfectly composed facade cracking as she processed the information. "Marcus Reed, founder, Cheo Heritage Motors Group." The color drained from her face so dramatically that for a moment I thought she might faint. Her hand trembled slightly, causing the champagne in her glass to ripple. "This is your..." She stammered, all eloquence, deserting the star attorney. From the head table, my mother called out, "What is it, Stephanie?" Stephanie seemed unable to respond, still staring at my card. Her husband James approached with concern. "Everything okay, honey?" he asked, placing a hand on her shoulder. She handed him the card wordlessly. His reaction was less dramatic, but equally telling. His eyebrows shot up, and he looked at me with new interest. "Heritage Motors," he said. "The restoration company. The one that developed retro tech." My father had gotten up now, moving toward our little group, with my mother following. "What's going on?" he demanded. James handed him my card. "Your son is the Marcus Reed, the one who revolutionized classic car restoration, the one who was in Auto Enthusiast last month." Dad stared at the card, then at me, his expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and something that might have been the first glimmer of respect I'd ever seen from him. My mother snatched the card from his hands, her eyes darting back and forth as she read it multiple times. "CEO. Of what exactly?" The question hung in the air, bringing conversations around us to a complete halt as people sensed the unfolding drama. "Heritage Motors Group," I replied calmly. "We're the leading classic car restoration company in the country, with locations in 5 states. We employ over 500 people, from master mechanics to software engineers. Our proprietary diagnostic system, RetroTech, is licensed by Ford, BMW, and Mercedes for their heritage divisions." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background music seemed to have paused. My father was the first to recover. "You own a garage chain?" he asked, trying to downplay what he had just heard. "No, Dad. I own an automotive technology and restoration company valued at over $300 million. The old car I drove here today is worth more than your house." A relative I barely recognized pulled out his phone and started typing frantically. "Oh my God," he announced to the room. "It's true. Heritage Motors is huge. There's articles about them everywhere." More phones emerged as people began searching my name. Murmurs spread through the room as search results confirmed my identity. Stephanie had recovered her composure somewhat, though her complexion remained pale. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" She demanded a note of accusation in her voice, as if my success without her knowledge was somehow a betrayal. "Tell who I ask simply. No one here has contacted me in 15 years. No one asked what I was doing or if I needed help. I sent one Christmas card 5 years ago with my company logo clearly visible, but I guess no one thought to look it up." My mother's expression had transformed completely. The dismissiveness was gone, replaced by something like calculation. I could almost see her mentally rewriting the family narrative to include her successful entrepreneur son. "We always knew you had potential with cars," she said, reaching to touch my arm. I stepped back slightly, avoiding the contact. "You should have told us about your company. We would have been so proud." "Would you?" I asked quietly. "When I left, you told me working with cars was a dead-end job. You took my college fund for Stephanie's law school because my future wasn't worth investing in. Dad said not everyone is cut out for success. 15 years later, you invited me to a party where I'm seated at the kids' table while the entire family celebrates Stephanie becoming junior partner at a law firm." The raw truth landed like a physical blow. My father actually flinched. Now Marcus, he began adopting the placating tone he used with difficult customers at the hardware store. "That was a long time ago. Families have misunderstandings." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," I corrected him. "It was a clear message about my value in this family." Relatives were openly staring now, some with discomfort, others with the undisguised interest of people witnessing compelling reality television. James, surprisingly, was the one who broke the tension. "I read that article about you," he said. "The restoration of the Ferrari GTO was remarkable. And the software you developed for diagnostics, my firm's automotive clients talk about it all the time." "Your car," my father said suddenly, as if just connecting the dots. "The Shelby outside. That's not just some old car, is it?" "It's a 1967 Shelby GT 500, I confirmed. Fully restored by me personally. Current market value around $350,000. My father ran a hand through his hair, looking genuinely destabilized for the first time in my memory. "I had no idea." "That was the point," I said. "I didn't come here to show off or prove anything. I came for closure." The party atmosphere had completely disintegrated. Guests were now openly gathered around our group, abandoning any pretense of not listening. I heard whispers. 300,500,000 employees in magazines. My mother, Ever, the social manager, attempted to regain control of the situation. "Well, this is wonderful news. We have 2 successful children to celebrate tonight." She raised her voice to address the room. "Everyone a toast to both our amazing children, Stephanie the attorney, and Marcus the car company owner." The awkward toast received scattered applause. I noticed several relatives, who had completely ignored me earlier, now attempting to catch my eye, their expressions suddenly friendly and interested. Stephanie, recovered from her initial shock, made a visible effort to reassert herself. "Well, I always said you were good with cars," she claimed, rewriting history on the spot. "I told my colleagues at the firm about my brother, the mechanical genius." "Did you tell them you mocked me for washing cars 5 minutes ago?" I asked mildly. She flushed, but pressed on. "That was just a joke between siblings. You know how we tease each other." An elderly aunt approached, practically pushing past Stephanie to reach me. "Marcus, dear, we've been so worried about you all these years. You must come visit us sometime. Bring your... Do you have a wife?" "Girlfriend." And just like that, the floodgates opened. Relatives who hadn't spoken 2 words to me during dinner suddenly had urgent questions about my business, my life in Seattle, my relationship status. Business cards appeared as uncles and cousins in various industries suggested opportunities to collaborate. My father pulled me aside, his expression earnest. "Son, we should talk more. Maybe you could come by the house tomorrow. I'd love to hear about your business. Maybe there are ways the hardware store could, supply your company with tools or materials." My mother was already on her phone, presumably texting friends about her newly discovered successful son. I heard her say to a friend, "Marcus owns that car company you see in magazines. The one that works with BMW." James handed me his business card. My firm represents several automotive companies. We should discuss if there's any fit there. Stephanie stood slightly apart, her expression caught between embarrassment and calculation. When our eyes met, she offered a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. I could almost see her recalibrating her position in the family hierarchy, trying to determine if being a junior partner at a regional law firm still outranked being the CEO of a national company. Throughout it all, I maintained a calm, slightly detached demeanor. I answered questions politely, but briefly. I accepted business cards without promising to call. I didn't elaborate on my success or try to impress anyone. After about 20 minutes of this sudden attention, I checked my watch and realized it was time to reclaim control of the situation. I had seen everything I needed to see. As the party continued to swirl around me, relatives jostling for attention, parents suddenly interested in my life, Stephanie attempting to reframe our relationship as supportive rather than dismissive, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The validation I might have craved years ago now seemed hollow and unnecessary. I approached my father, who was in the middle of explaining to his fishing buddies that he had always encouraged Marcus's mechanical abilities. "Dad," I interrupted gently, "I should get going. I have an early drive tomorrow." His face fell with genuine disappointment. "Already? But we haven't had a chance to really talk. Your mother thought you might stay for the weekend. We could have brunch tomorrow. Maybe you could see the store." "I need to get back to Seattle," I said firmly. "I have meetings on Monday. I can't reschedule." End of chapter. I need to get back to Seattle. From my jacket pocket, I withdrew a small, carefully wrapped package. "This is for you. Happy birthday." He opened it with uncharacteristic care, revealing the handcrafted fishing lures nestled in a custom wooden box. Each was a work of art designed specifically for the northern Michigan lakes he loved to fish. "These are," he began touching one gently, with his fingertip. "Made by William Thatcher in Montana, I finished for him. He only makes 12 sets a year. I thought you might use them at the cabin." The fact that I remembered his love of fishing, that I had selected a gift with genuine thought rather than grabbing something expensive to impress, seemed to affect him more deeply than any revelation about my business success. "Thank you," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "This is very thoughtful." My mother appeared at his side, her social mask firmly back in place. "Marcus, everyone is so excited to hear about your company. I thought perhaps you could say a few words. Maybe tell everyone about your journey." "Not tonight, Mom," I said. "This is Dad's celebration. I just wanted to wish him happy birthday in person." "But you're leaving already. We have so much to catch up on. 15 years, and your beautiful home in Seattle. Stephanie mentioned your company headquarters is quite impressive. We should plan a visit soon." "I travel a lot," I said, non-committally. "But you have my email now." She reached for a hug that I accepted, but didn't fully return. As she embraced me, she whispered, "We're so proud of you. I always knew you'd find your way." The revision of history was almost impressive in its completeness. In her mind, perhaps, she truly believed she had always supported me. I made my way toward the exit, stopping to say brief goodbyes to a few relatives who seemed genuinely pleased to have reconnected. Several pressed business cards into my hand with whispered suggestions about investment opportunities or collaborations. I accepted them politely, knowing they would likely end up in a hotel wastebasket. Stephanie intercepted me near the door, her husband beside her. Her composure was fully restored, though something in her eyes remained unsettled. "You're not staying the weekend?" she asked. "Mom said the guest room is all prepared." "I have commitments in Seattle," I replied. "Well, we should definitely reconnect," she insisted. "I have contacts at several automotive companies through the firm. I could make introductions. Heritage already works with most major manufacturers, but thank you for the offer." James, more perceptive than his wife, extended his hand. "It was good to meet you, Marcus. What you've built is impressive." I shook his hand, appreciating his straightforward acknowledgement without the family's emotional baggage. "Marcus," Stephanie said, as I turned to leave, her voice lower now, almost vulnerable. "Why didn't you tell us all these years?" I considered the question carefully before answering. Would it have mattered, Stephanie? Would, knowing I was successful, have changed how you saw me? Or would it just have changed how you treated me? She had no response to that, and I didn't wait for one. I walked out into the cool Michigan evening, the weight of 15 years lifting with each step toward my car. As I drove away from the community center, I could see my family in the rearview mirror, standing in a small cluster, watching my departure. Just like 15 years ago, I was driving away from Millfield, but this time I wasn't running from something. I was simply returning to the life I had built. The days after the party brought exactly what I had expected, a flood of messages. My mother sent daily emails full of questions about my company, my home, my life in Seattle. My father called twice, once to thank me again for the fishing lures, and once to awkwardly explore whether Heritage Motors might be interested in expanding into the Midwest. Relatives I barely remembered sent LinkedIn connection requests and Facebook messages. Stephanie sent a text that read, "Simply, I'm sorry for what I said at the party." I didn't know. The implication was clear. She was sorry because I turned out to be successful, not because her behavior had been cruel. I didn't respond. Back in Seattle, I processed the experience through sessions with Dr. Winters and conversations with Jessica, who listened without judgment as I unpacked the complex emotions of the reunion. "Do you regret going?" she asked, as we walked along the shore near our home, the Olympic Mountains visible across the Sound. "No," I said after consideration. It confirmed what I needed to know. Their validation or approval doesn't matter anymore. It's not about proving them wrong or right. I built this life for myself, not in relation to them. In the months that followed, I made 3 significant decisions. First, I reconnected with one cousin, Amy, who had reached out after the party with a genuine message that made no mention of my business or success, just a simple acknowledgement that it had been good to see me and that she had always wondered how I was doing. Second, I established a scholarship foundation for students with learning disabilities who wanted to pursue careers in automotive technology or mechanical engineering. The first recipient was a dyslexic high school senior from Millfield, whose application essay about feeling overlooked by the educational system resonated deeply. Third, I began mentoring young people without family support through a local program for at-risk youth. Twice a month, I taught automotive basics to teenagers who, like me at 17, needed someone to see their potential rather than their circumstances. My relationship with my biological family settled into a distant, occasional connection. I responded to some messages, ignored others. I sent appropriate gifts for birthdays and holidays, but declined invitations to visit. They never directly acknowledged the past or apologized for their treatment of me, and I never demanded they do so. Stephanie eventually stopped trying to connect our professional worlds when it became clear I had no interest in leveraging her legal connections. My mother's emails became less frequent as she realized I wouldn't be providing the details she craved about my glamorous CEO life. My father occasionally sent photos of fish he caught using the lures I had given him. These messages, free of expectations or pretense, were the ones I most often answered. 1 year after the birthday party, Jessica and I were married in a small ceremony on the shores of Puget Sound, surrounded by the chosen family we had built. Friends, colleagues, mentees, who had become like siblings or children to us. No one from Millfield attended, though I had sent invitations. My father was in the hospital with minor surgery. My mother wouldn't travel without him, and Stephanie had an unmovable court date. I found I didn't mind their absence. As I reflect on the journey from that 17-year-old boy sleeping in his car to the man I am today, I realized the most valuable lesson wasn't about success or proving my worth. It was about defining family not through biology but through genuine care and support. It was about understanding that forgiveness doesn't require reconciliation. You can release the anger without resuming the relationship. Most importantly, I learned that the greatest freedom comes from living your life according to your own definition of success, not someone else's. My grandfather knew this when he told me not to return until I had built something that was mine. What he understood, and what took me years to realize, was that he wasn't talking about a business or financial success. He was talking about a life built on my own terms, measured by my own values, and filled with people who saw me clearly and loved me anyway. That's the real success story. Not the company, not the innovations, not the vindication of the birthday party revelation. The real success is waking up each morning next to someone who loves me, for who I am, mentoring young people who remind me of myself, and knowing that my worth was never dependent on my family's recognition of it. If you have ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed by those who should have believed in you, most know this. Your value isn't determined by their perception. Sometimes the family you need isn't the one you were born into, but the one you build along the way. And sometimes the greatest act of self-love is to walk away from those who cannot see your worth, and toward those who recognize it without being shown. What about you? Have you ever had to prove someone wrong about you? Or have you found your chosen family when your biological one didn't understand you? Drop a comment below, hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. Your support means everything, and I'm grateful you took this journey with me today. Until next time, remember that sometimes the best revenge isn't success. It's finding peace, regardless of what others think of you.